Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Jamie. It's my pleasure to sort of say a few words at the start of today, and I'm actually going to wear three different hats. Okay, so I've got a sponsor's hat, which I'll start with. I've got a researcher's hat, so I'm going to share a few insights. You'll see why I'm going to do that in a minute. And I'm going to wear a judge's hat as well, because I've judged the last 2 years, and I've got one thought for you. Okay, so three hats to wear in the next 5 minutes. First of all, in terms of why we sponsor this, we've sponsored the World Media Group for the last 5 years, World Media Awards for the last 2 years, and when Jamie got in touch about tonight, we were very happy to be involved with this as well. And I think one of the reasons why we do that is that as a company, we were set up in 2018, and our main product is all about helping publishers prove the effectiveness of their work. So our technology sits in the publishers' tech stacks, and it's all about giving them independent data to prove their effectiveness. So we very much sit in this room, and anything that we can do, whether it's sponsorship or data, to help publishers, that's why we're here. So it's a natural fit from a sponsorship point of view. Now, one of the benefits of being a sponsor is you get to do a 30-second elevator pitch. So here it is. So we work with quite a lot of the publishers on that list already. And in terms of what we do for them, it's very simple, we help them measure the effectiveness of campaigns on their site. So when we talk about effectiveness, we're talking about the middle of the funnel. We measure 4 mid-funnel metrics: awareness, consideration, preference, and intent. So before anyone clicks, what are the campaigns actually doing to affect what's going on in people's minds? That's what we're doing campaign after campaign. We do things a little bit differently. So we measure in the wild, and what I mean by that is we don't use panels. We actually measure the publisher's own audience on their own site. So surveys appear in the publisher environment. So we're measuring real audience, their real reactions. We measure small campaigns. Because we're operating within the publisher ecosystem, we can retarget really effectively. We can measure really small campaigns. And when we're talking about content, often content campaigns are small. So to be able to measure campaigns that maybe were unmeasurable before, that's another benefit we offer. The third point is we allow for campaign exposure. So as part of our measurement process, we don't just say, have you seen an ad or haven't you? We're interested in how many times have you seen the ad or piece of content, and how long have you seen it for? And for something like content, that's really important, because if you're creating content, you're trying to engage people for a period of time. So it's important that we capture that information as part of the measurement. And the final thing is we automate for scale. We're a SaaS platform. We charge a monthly fee for unlimited measurements, and we're all about don't decide which campaign to measure the lot. So that's our sort of our edict, if you like. So that's my elevator pitch. Hopefully makes sense, and hopefully it explains why we're here tonight. And it's a segue into the second hat, which is the researcher's hat. Because we're measuring a lot of campaigns, we've got a lot of data. So we've got a database of over 60,000 campaigns measured across various channels. And what that means is that we can dig into it and look at some overall insights. So part 2 is I want to do that and share just 5 top-line insights from a piece of work we did with the Native Advertising Institute, which some of you may be familiar with, a Danish-based organisation that looks at content, looks at native advertising, and looks at its effectiveness. So we did a white paper for them based on over 2,000 content measurements, over 700,000 survey responses, over 1 billion impressions, so big data. And here are 5 very, very top-line things. I haven't got very long tonight, so I could spend half an hour on this, but I won't. The first one, quite obvious, I think we all kind of feel this, but content can have a very powerful effect. So as part of this study, what we did is we compared content-based campaigns against display campaigns. So what you can see here, that's the average effect across many thousands of display campaigns. Average brand lift, about 10%. If we look at content, it's double, about 20%. So content campaign works really well. But within averages, there are always highs and lows. So what you can see over on the left-hand side, on the other side, is we looked at the top 10%. So top 10% of those campaigns, and they are 3 times more effective than the average. So I guess what this is saying is content works, really good content works really well. The second insight's around time. I mentioned before that we capture time spent in content. And the thought here is the stronger the engagement with a piece of content, the more effective it's going to be. Again, a lot of these are quite obvious statements, but there's data here to back it up. So 2 graphs here. This one here compares display against native. And along the bottom, you've got different lengths of time. And you can just see visually from the pattern there, even if you can't read the percentages, that display campaigns tend to be seen for less periods of time. So it's very much quick view and you move on, whereas content tends to be viewed for much longer. So 40% is at least 30 seconds or more. So display being seen for a short period of time, content being seen for longer. And that might seem quite obvious, but then when you come over to this side, you can see, well, what's the effect of that? And here, if you look at the display campaigns, it kind of doesn't really matter how long you've seen a campaign for, the effect is pretty much the same. But when you look at the content, the longer people are engaged with a piece of content, the more we're seeing effectiveness come in. So you'll see all of those, there's an upward trajectory on the metrics. So I guess the thing here is the more you can engage people with the content, the longer they spend there, the more effective it's going to be. Point 3, and this is all around where content works. So we measure those 4 metrics. And what we've done here is we've assumed that the total effect of the campaign is 100%. And then we've looked to see how that breaks down across the 4 metrics. So here you can see display up the top. That's the natural break. Red awareness, yellow consideration, mauve preference, and then grey, whatever that colour is, intent. And so the first point here, if you look at native or look at content at the bottom, there's a much higher proportion against consideration. So of the 4 metrics, we see content advertising as really driving that consideration metric, which kind of ties in with the time. You know, the more time you're spending engaging with a piece of content, the more likely you are to get people to think perhaps a little bit differently about the brand. But that varies by category. So if that's the overall view, what we then do is we drill down into individual categories. So here I've just got a couple of random ones. At the top we've got gambling, and at the bottom we've got professional and trade services. And you can see there that for gambling, consideration is even more important part of the mix. And if you think about how gambling apps might be used, you're not going to be making your mind up each time, oh, hang on, which one should I use? You need to be in that consideration set to even have a chance of being used. So consideration and preference, really important for gambling apps. But then if you look at professional and trade services, there's a greater focus there on intent. So if you're going to renovate your house or employ a new accountant or something like that, you've got to make sure you get the right person. So it's a lot more around advertising or content that drives the actual action intent. So I guess what this is saying is consideration is a key metric for content, but that can really vary category by category. Item number 4, this is just looking at individual industry categories. So what we've done here, the average across content was about 21%. We've looked at what are the top 5 industry categories in terms of driving effectiveness. You'll see there that the top of the list is travel and tourism. We're then coming down media, retail, insurance and auto. Those are 5 of the highest performing categories. But even within that there can be differences. So we measure 19 categories, and within each category we go down into subcategories. So there's 122 of those. So if we look at retail, which is the 3rd highest, within retail there's quite a mixture. So you've got department stores well below average, you've got toys and gaming, home interiors very much above average. So again, I think understanding this, if you think about how the categories operate, it helps you understand why they operate the way they do, higher interest, more involvement. Final point was just, we did an exercise trying to group publishers into the types of publishers they are. So here we divided publishers into four areas: news, lifestyle, business and special interest, just to see what's the average effect across those 4. And then within that we had a look at individual metrics. And I think there you can start to see, we saw that kind of lifestyle is particularly effective amongst some of the upper funnel metrics, awareness and consideration, whereas special interest has a higher effect lower down the funnel. So 5 random insights just from our database, but hopefully gives you an idea by having this information, the kind of things that you can look at. Final hat for tonight. So the third hat was a judge's hat. I've judged the last 2 years, and I guess the point I would make there, when you look at 20, 30 different entries, each entry can be really, really good. But when it comes to did it work, there's often a lot of big numbers in there. And each one will say high levels of impressions, high viewability, high engagement, this was above average. And it tends to be just like a menu of big numbers. And I think what can be more effective is to provide some context to those numbers. So if you start thinking about what's really important in this category and how has a particular number delivered against that objective, I think it becomes a much more coherent story. So as you're putting together your stories, just have a think, don't just list down lots of big numbers, give some meaning to those numbers.